Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started here. I see a few more people are popping on the call, but we did hit noon here Eastern time, so I want to make sure that we start everything on time. And if there are any issues hearing me with the audio, with the visuals, do let me know in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that. Okay. So hi, everyone, and thank you for joining me for today's presentation. My name is Jill McConaughey, and I'm the Manager of Marketing and Customer Success here at LinkPoint 360. It's my pleasure to speak with everybody today and to share today's content with you. Now, before I get started, I do like to share a few brief housekeeping notes. All attendees are muted and are placed in listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar. In the GoToWebinar viewer, you can make the presentation full screen for easier viewing. But I do want today to be as interactive as it can be, so do feel free to submit your questions, or if you have your own use cases or email integration challenges that you're looking to solve, do go ahead and submit them in the questions section in the GoToWebinar panel. I will pause along the way to review those, and we'll also have time for Q&A at the end of the session today as well. I am recording this webinar and will also send a link of the recording out to everybody later today. So the idea for today's topic actually has come to me in my discussions with customers over the past few months. In my role, I'm pretty familiar with every feature, function, or option available in our email integration software options, but I've learned over the past few months, if not the past few years, that many of our customers who come to us to solve one or two very specific use cases address those, but then the rest of the software can become underutilized. We also have regular releases of the software, so a client that comes on board maybe even a couple years ago may not even realize or have taken advantage of some of the newer features that we offer. I've also encountered a number of prospective clients on the marketing side of my role, and if you're joining the call today, absolutely welcome to you as well. But these buyers have an idea of what they're looking for or a problem they're trying to solve. They just don't realize how much more our solutions can include or can do or can solve. So my goal in a role that spans the customer journey from pre-sale all the way through years and years of client renewals is pretty simple. It's to make sure that you can make an informed decision about your purchase, and then after you come on board with LinkPoint 360, that you get the most out of that purchase. So my goal is just to make you all successful, however you define success. So LinkPoint 360, to give you a little background, designs solutions that simplify working with or populating CRM data with as minimal change to existing user workflows as possible. Our solutions do bridge the gap between users who don't want to use Salesforce or other CRM systems and those managers, admins, or ownership who want nothing more than Salesforce adoption. You've put that money and that expense and that time into that CRM, and you're looking to get everybody on board with it. And you can see on screen, we have a number of different systems and solutions and sort of combinations of platforms that we do support. Now, we've found through the majority of our users that the end users prefer to remain in their inbox throughout their day. It's where they do the bulk of their work and where they're the most comfortable. To accommodate this, our 3 LinkPoint editions do streamline how users work between email and CRM, either by adding information to the CRM or viewing that information from within the email application itself. Each of our editions address different use cases or customer platform requirements, and you'll get to see each of these in action today a little bit, but as you can see, we offer a desktop version, which is our classic that most of our customers are the most familiar with, a plus version, which does enhance that with additional integration, and a cloud edition, which we introduced a little over a year ago, and that's our server-side solution. So we have a variety of options available to make sure, again, that you get the most out of not just your purchase, but that you're able to also achieve those email integration goals. So some of you may be newer to LinkPoint 360, some of you not so much, but today's topic is less of an overview and a little bit more of a deep dive. So we're looking to help you get the most or get more out of your LinkPoint Connect experience with features and functions that you may have missed along the way. Since we have 3 editions and releases for each throughout the years, I'm hoping that what we cover will help you find new ways to use the software. And again, like I said, along the way, I'm going to stop and make sure that if there are any questions or comments that I'm able to address those. So do feel free to chime in there in that question section or in the chat. I'm more than happy to stop and address anything that I'm talking about. And as you can see on screen, I have an idea of where we would head with this conversation today and what we'll look at. So creating records with zero typing, different ways to work with attachments, mobile options, email templates, working with required fields is a good one. I think a lot of people don't turn that option on. And how the different editions can even work with pre-configured workflows, which is usually a pretty big or pretty popular option for our admins out there. So one quick note before I do get started and jump into the actual content. Most new clients or users, if you're on an evaluation version of our software, you should have access to most of these options out of the box. Longer term customers, if you have your auto updates disabled or we've customized the software for you, you may not see some of the features I'm about to show. Just might be that we've disabled them either intentionally along the way or they popped up over the years and you just never got access to them. If you're interested in adding something that you're not seeing in your instance, but you see on mine today, you can just let me know either in the chat or you can email customer success at linkpoint360.com. We can set up a quick chat or go back and forth and talk about how to add that to your license. So that's all of the housekeeping. So let's jump into how to actually get more out of LinkPoint Connect. And the first place I'd like to go is into my inbox here in Outlook. Hopefully everyone can still see my screen. And I want to talk about our drag and drop feature. LinkPoint Connect, when you have it installed on the desktop, is fairly obvious. And it's obvious because you're going to see this big side panel on the side here. I'm on the right. Some buttons here in the top. I'm in the top left corner. So you'll know you have it when you see all these buttons. But what a lot of people don't see, and let's switch to someone who's not in my CRM, unless someone's testing. There we go. And down in the bottom, and they're really teeny tiny, so I'm moving my mouse back and forth. Hopefully you can see. There are these three little buttons. They look like little house and a couple of people. And I'm intentionally skipping the last one. It's a little less relevant here today. This is our drop zone. So I think a lot of people miss this one just because they're not actually buttons and they're not really labeled and they're sort of tucked all the way at the bottom, but it's one of the biggest, most helpful features, I think, when cutting down on typing, which I love to do. I'm constantly entering in new contact information for people, updating notes, and one of the things that's just going to make you less efficient is having to manually key everything in. So what you can see here is I'm on an email from Michael James, and my side panel is returning no match in Salesforce because he doesn't exist. So the natural inclination could be to create a lead or a contact. Now you can go up to the top right here and use our smart forms to go ahead and generate a contact record. You'll just be typing everything in yourself. Where I want to show you is if you actually highlight this email signature, and then I'm going to click with my left mouse button and I'm going to hold it down and I'm going to drag with that button still clicked. And you see I'm getting a little circle with a line through it. When I mouse over the options at the bottom, hopefully you can see this. I know it's tiny. I'm getting a little plus sign. When I let go, what's going to happen here, of course I have multiple monitors, is it's going to launch that very same smart form, but it already pre-filled everything. So I think this is really helpful because I'm bad at typing in phone numbers, things where I can get things reversed or sort of mismatched here. And you can see I've gone ahead and I've mapped this entire contact without having to type anything. Now, another great feature, if you have existing business rules, you have required fields, you can see I have a few here that are red. Workflows, your users aren't going to be able to get around that. So they'll still have to go ahead and verify, validate, add any extra information that may not be done through the drag and drop. But the core functionality of actually putting the content into the form and submitting the new contact or lead or account, which is the three options we support with drag and drop, makes it pretty simple and seamless here. So that's our drag and drop feature. And you can just go ahead and click create, and that'll go ahead and immediately create that record in Salesforce for you. Now, while we're talking about dragging and dropping, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about attachments. So we support attachment recording in a couple of our editions, and we'll stay in desktop for just a minute. But what I want to do is actually point out these paperclip icons over in my side panel. And again, they're pretty small, so bear with me here, but you can see I have this little paperclip here. If I switch to, let's see, do I have an opportunity to play with? Yes. If I switch to an opportunity record, here's another little paperclip, teeny tiny in the row of icons. This is actually not a button. And again, it's in a row of icons you can click to do things with. But the little paperclip icon is actually another little mini drop zone, and it's contextual. So this one up here is for Fred's record because I'm in the business card. This one down here is for this opportunity because I'm viewing the opportunity. And if I mouse down, let's see if I can make this a little bigger for people to see. I have multiple. As we switch, I get a different paperclip depending on which one I'm looking at. So why am I showing you this? Well, let's say I have this email here from Fred, and this sample attachment is actually a signed contract, and I need to record that in, but I don't really care about the email itself. If I click and hold, and I drag, just like I did previously with the email signature, and I let go over top of the paperclip, I know it looks like nothing happened, but it actually ran a file upload behind the scenes for me. So I've just attached that signed contract to Fred's record in Salesforce. And that makes getting important attachments really easy to get into the CRM very quickly. Now, before I switch gears and talk about configuring attachments, I do see a question here from Sherry asking about whether we are Lightning ready, and the answer is yes. So all the versions of our software will work with Salesforce Lightning, and whether you're using Classic now and you're about to switch or vice versa, absolutely, should all work out of the box for you. Switching back to attachments for a second, you can also record attachments when you're recording emails. This one's a little bit slightly more obvious. You can see I have this box here in my record window, and I can click to go ahead and record this attachment as part of the recording process. Most people see this option. What I want to show you is how to configure it. So if you go to your LinkPoint tab at the top and click Configure, you will land on, there we go, 2 screens today, not cooperating. Okay, you will end up in our configuration box. And what you can actually do is go to your record options here, and you can actually choose this selection here to record all attachments by default when you're recording emails. So you don't have to go in and check those boxes. That can be convenient if you're in a compliance situation. It can also be really inconvenient if you're recording a lot of those Twitter icons that people stick in their email signatures. So one thing I always recommend here, if I could type today, is you can also go in here and start excluding file extensions or file names. So if you have a certain corporate brochure you always send out or a one sheet, you don't have to keep recording that. If people are stuffing the little social media icons into their emails and you don't want to record them, you can make this list and then click apply, click OK. And then when you go to record your emails, it'll automatically record all attachments by default, except the ones that hit this criteria I just typed into this box. Now, some of you may or may not be familiar with our Cloud Edition, and here it is. And it looks very different, I know. And if you're interested in this or want a little more in-depth look at it, I can certainly do that. But if you're using our server-side version, where there's nothing to install and everything sort of runs in the cloud for you, those same options for working with attachments completely apply. So I'm going to launch my ignore attachment list. And you can see here, I have a bunch of typically spammy file name extensions here, but I can go ahead and do the same thing and add a PNG, now it's at the bottom here, to my list of excluded attachment types. So I can manage what's not going to go into my instance of Salesforce. And then when I'm configuring my email sync and I go down into that screen, I have an option to automatically record all attachments or not. So you can choose to automatically record all attachments whenever you send or receive an email, except those that meet those requirements, whether they're file names or they're file extensions. So that's a very quick look at the same exact thing in Cloud Edition, but I like to make sure everybody is aware of it. When you're working with desktop, we can pre-configure the attachment and a lot of other features you'll see today. We can pre-configure that for you. So you can have it included in your deployment for everyone. When you're working with Cloud Edition, admins can actually do the exact same settings for all of their users or groups of users. Here I'm on the subscription level as an admin, and you can see I have the exact same option. Well, I don't have it turned on. There we go. I have the exact same option, but I'm getting this extra little lock symbol. So I could even click to lock that. So you can pre-configure this yourselves, and with desktop, we're certainly happy to help you preset your installer before you push it out to everybody's PC. So again, going a little quickly just because I'm trying to cram in a lot of content here, but we've gotten to talk about creating records with basically zero typing. We've talked about attachments, and the next thing I did want to talk about is mobile, and I'm in a pretty good spot since I'm already on Cloud Edition. We do have, as you can see, a server-side option. Not too many people are aware of it. You can pre-configure settings. I'm in the web portal as an admin here. This solution is a really great way to get more, not just out of LinkPoint, but out of your CRM users, because what we found is, or I've seen, there's always that one Mac user on your team, or the two sales reps who are never in the office on their laptop. They're always running around with their iPhones. So if you're looking for something to give you a consistent workflow, or you want to tack on a couple of Cloud Edition licenses for those rogue Mac or mobile users, this is going to be the way to get all of your users up and running with email integration. The reason why is, and I sort of mentioned it already, there's nothing to install. So you'll provision an account, someone will own that account and can preset things. Your users can come in and connect to Salesforce and Exchange, and the sync will either run the way you tell it to run, or your user can set it up to have it run the way your user wants it to run. You can see here we have calendar, contact, email, and task sync, so it's very similar to desktop. The email portion is just automated. So on desktop, you're clicking record buttons. In this, it's just going to run the way you tell it to. So I always like to make sure everyone knows that it's a pretty good option if you've got those few users who you've never been able to get them on LinkPoint because they just either refuse to have a PC or they're never on that laptop that's in the office anyway. And with the desktop version, which is over here, for our sync operations to run, the PC has to be on. So that's not too bad, because if I shut it off and then the next morning when I boot it back up, the sync process will pick up and it'll run and no data will be missing. With the cloud version, you can set the time windows for it to run during. So whether your computer's on and off, whether you're jumping from your laptop to your Android tablet to your iPhone, the sync will just run from anywhere you have access to your Exchange account. So gives you a little bit more flexibility, doesn't need anything to be on to run other than it has to obviously be enabled. Speaking of the mobile users that are out there, you're one or two, or maybe you have 50 sales reps running around with their iPhones, I do want to mention that we also offer an option to integrate with meeting notes. So this is a mobile app. It's also a desktop integration, and you'll see us talk a lot about our Plus edition, and this is that extra feature. Let me just fight with my secondary screen. And I'm going to show it to you on my desktop. I couldn't get my iPad to cast today, and I'm running a trial, so I'm going to skip through these extra bits here. But essentially what this feature does, and it's our meeting recap feature, is it lets you customize an experience. So you can say which fields in Salesforce you always want updated, or which questions you want your reps always answering or filling in. And it'll walk them through a custom experience. So you can see I'm going to do meeting notes on an opportunity. And what the sales rep experience is going to be is a list of questions here. And when you're on the mobile, it's even more seamless. It's just, touch and swipe. So we're going to go ahead. I have a lot of test data in here, so let's see. And they're conditional. So depending on, as a rep, what I answer, maybe it's a follow-up call versus demo, the questions that are presented will change. The whole goal here isn't to give reps more to do. It's to give them, and you can see I'm clicking as I talk, give them a super quick way to put their notes or their thoughts in after they hang up the phone with a client, or when they walk out of a meeting that just had on site with a prospect, and get this information back into Salesforce. We've all had those reps with the meeting notes that just say had call, and you're left wondering what they talked about. This is a way to find out what they talked about. And each of these, here's a good example, expected deal revenue. Each of these is going to map back to a specific Salesforce field. So I'm not having to go in and update all the fields on that opportunity as an end user. I'm just clicking along, figuring out what I have to do here, answering these questions. And what it's doing behind the scenes is it actually updated an opportunity for me on the fly. The extra great part is when you finish a recap, it will send an email if you prefer. It will actually send an email out to the manager on that account so that they can see what that feedback was, they can see what the conversation was, and no one has to wonder what's happening with a certain account or opportunity or when something's going to close and so forth. So I like to show that because it's the Plus edition is, there is an extra fee in it, but for some customers, they can add on this Plus option for a group of their users, and they find that their CRM adoption really goes up because it somewhat forces everybody to populate Salesforce. Now, when it's on the mobile, again, it's even simpler, just touch and swipe and go. You can turn it on to prompt people to do their meeting recaps. It's just another way to, again, we're trying to help you get your Salesforce populated, and that's an easy way to do it behind the scenes. Now let's get back out of mobile and look back here now that I'm back in desktop and talk about email templates. So not too many folks know that we actually have a couple of additional outbound email options. So let's go ahead and do a new email here. So in this case, let me get a little bit bigger. I'm writing back to Fred, and I send the same emails out all the time, and I'm kind of tired of typing the same thing over and over or copy pasting. What you can do is if you use Salesforce email templates or set those up in your CRM, you can come up here to this button for Salesforce email template, and anything that the user has access to in Salesforce is going to be something they can pick here. So they can pick a template. Then we support mail merge. So this example is super basic. It's just going to merge in based on the contact, but you can have additional fields populated here. And when you click apply, you can see it dumped in the content. It also pre-populated the name. And like I said, you can merge in account fields, other contact fields. You can pre-populate it with your own information. This was just a test. But if you set that up in Salesforce, it can make it really easy for sales teams to get their prospecting emails out pretty simply, your customer support or success teams to send somewhat repetitive communications back with customers. And it's great because you can change it here. So if this paragraph is irrelevant in this case, as I know what I'm sending out to someone, you can go ahead and change it, but it'll pre-populate for you. So the email templates I find pretty helpful. Our whole team here uses them. It just makes it a little bit more efficient for you to do somewhat regular communication with people. The button above it, just to point it out while I'm here, is for library items. So same difference. If you have commonly sent one-sheets or brochures or blank mutual NDA that you always have to send out to folks, you can go ahead and actually attach a library item. And so this is going to be whatever, again, you have access to in your Salesforce, and mine's all test data, so this example is a little silly, but you would just go ahead and select the document, add it, and click OK. And now in my case, I'm attaching a logo, but in your case, that might be that NDA document that's centrally housed. So from a document management perspective, if you have one version of a document you want everyone using, you can put it in one spot and everyone can pull it down at the same time. To my earlier point, if you're recording your attachments and you know this is something that always goes out, you can add that attachment name to the list of please don't record these, so you can always pull the same documents but never record them back to your CRM. Let's talk now a little bit about email recording since we're inside of an email, and I am watching to see if there are any questions. I don't see any. Let me know if I'm talking too fast also here. I'm just trying to make sure we fit everything in today in the time we have. Email recording is pretty straightforward. Most of you are hopefully familiar with it. Same basic approach for inbound and outbound. I'm on an outbound here. I could click this Smart Send and it'll just automatically record the item to the matching records that it finds for the recipients. But I'm going to go ahead and launch our record window. Now, most of you on the call, I think I've even spoken to at one time or another, and I usually only have two sections in my record window. This related, which is querying Salesforce and looking for everything that matches the recipient, which is Fred here. And then this selection in our tabs, which is telling me Who do I want to record the email to, and how do I set this up to tell the system where to record to? What's different about my setup today is actually this third section, which we're calling additional details. If you have a requirement or would prefer when items record back to Salesforce, additional fields get updated. So whether they're required fields, and in our case, when we record emails, we record them back to a type field so we know which product or edition we're talking to someone about. Maybe it's what type of communication is this? Is it a follow-up versus outreach? Maybe it's for sales versus customer success. Your fields are your fields, but we can actually configure this to display custom and or required fields that your users can populate as part of the recording process. This also works when you're creating calendar items to record or sync back to Salesforce in our desktop edition. A lot of people really like the meeting type field, so we know whether it's a demo, whether it's a discovery call, whether it's contract call, but whatever your fields are, if it's helpful to you to further identify or further update the item when it goes into Salesforce, we can enable this for you. Anything required will be by default. So if I try to record this, I get an error because I'm supposed to do the required field before I can even record this and leave Outlook. So you get some compliance in that way. And when I click record now, the email will not just go to Fred and to this account, but this field will get updated automatically for me in Salesforce. Pretty sure that's a feature not too many folks know about. It's pretty easy for us to enable or help you with. So if that's something you're interested in, again, you can email customer success at LinkPoint360 or reach out to support at LinkPoint360.com, and either team should be able to help. And I see another question, and I'm in a good spot to explain it. So let's say, is there a way to record an email to multiple related accounts? That's a great question. Yes and no. So let me show you. I'm going to try that right now. I've picked my account and I want to record to another one, and I'm going to get an error message here. Now, Salesforce limits in most instances, depending on how you're configured. I think it's 99% of us are like this. It limits the number of related items that you can record to. So I could record to a whole bunch of contacts, but if I try to add a case, if I try to pull this into an account and an opportunity, it's not going to work. So what are your options? Usually we recommend pick the one that's going to be the most relevant. So if it's an account and an opportunity, I'd probably do the opportunity because it's a little bit more narrowed in and probably a little bit closer to what the topic of the email is about. If I absolutely have to record this, maybe it's an account and some super important custom object that I have, which we can also support custom objects. What we recommend, and it is a little bit of an extra step, is just go ahead and pick one. Remember which one you picked and click record now. Okay, now whether it's an inbound or an outbound email, you would then go back and click record again. I know it seems like an extra step. You can deselect the contact because I literally just recorded this to Fred. He doesn't need it again. But I can then go in and find that extra related item. So I did this account before. Now I can select this one and click record. So if you go out and then come back in, you can circumvent it. It will record the email as an email item twice in Salesforce, just so you know. That's how it gets around it. So the first time it was a single email related to 2 records. If I clicked record now, the email would go in a second time to this, essentially this 3rd record. So hopefully that's helpful or answers the question. Is an elegant solution? Not particularly, but it does get the job done if you have to get it onto multiple related records. The last thing I had on my list to talk about as we come up on time here, and hopefully everyone is still good to stick with me here, is talking about pre-configuration. We do offer a whole lot of go live customization services and whatnot, which we can do, and some of that's offered at cost, some of it's not, depending on what the scope of the project is. But I like to mention it because I know a lot of folks are either going, if you have a larger account or a bigger group of users, going machine to machine. Let's just close this. and pull the config up. Let's say you have calendar sync and you really want all of your users to be running calendar sync at the same time. So going machine to machine and setting this page up and then going in here and setting this one up 50 times, that's a little cumbersome. So if you just need us to go ahead and set up the calendar sync for you or pre-configure things for you to make your rollout or your adoption or your installation process that much simpler, highly recommend it. We can talk about what would go into that for you. I think there's value in consistent data. So all of your users are running things the same way, and some don't have bidirectional calendar on, and somebody else put on a one-way and started deleting things randomly from Salesforce. That's usually a nightmare of some sort. So there's definitely options for pre-configuring items. I mentioned a second ago, support for custom objects. Whether you're recording emails to a custom object or want to be able to create new records from the side panel, we do support that. It's just an extra step for us to go ahead and implement that for you. When I showed you Desktop Plus and we went through all those different question and answer scenarios, those were completely customizable as well. So you can set that up to run how you need. Cloud Edition is a little bit of a different animal. And again, we'll go back and look at it. This one's really great for companies, again, multi-platform users, people all over the place, maybe you have a decentralized workforce, and you just want all the items to sync back in a consistent way. You don't even need us to help you set this up. I mean, we're willing to help you, of course, or consult on the best practices of it. But if you want everyone in a particular profile, maybe my EMEA sales team here, to sync a certain way, I can come in as an admin. I can launch the calendar sync. You can see mine's already locked. I can preset this to be, let's say, bidirectional and to sync invitees, but I don't want to search on secondary. I can go through this whole screen. I can choose how I want it to work, and I can lock it. So that's my preset. It's not just establishing a default. It's when my end users come in and they connect to the system, they can't change these settings. So it forces them to go ahead and actually sync the way that I want. So this pre-configuration option is usually pretty helpful in larger companies. And again, Desktop and Plus, we can certainly assist you with that. Cloud, you have a little bit more flexibility to be able to do this independently, but we're certainly happy to help. I'm seeing more questions pop up, and I think that's great timing because I am going to actually open it up to some Q&A for the moment. So if you haven't submitted a question, feel free to do so. I'm just going to go ahead and pop this up on my other screen so I can read them a little bit better. Okay, great question. So we're going to go to desktop. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get this to pop up. Let's see if I can. Okay. So the question is, when you have an email and it has multiple contacts, mine only has one, but I think I can talk this through. What does the gold star mean next to one of the names? So for example, if there are three and only one has the star, will the email be recorded? Great question. Gold star here. The gold star is the one we think is most likely the match for you based on a number of pieces of criteria. It also kind of doesn't matter in a way. See, when I add an account, I can't gold star. I have to only get them on contacts. It's just telling us which one is going to be the primary or like the main place we're recording the item to. When we get a list of contacts, it's the one that's likely the best match. If I had a whole bunch of contacts here and only one had a star, it would still record to all of them. So the star doesn't mean that the email is or isn't recording. I can even move the star. So I just clicked. Now this one's gray, that one's gold. I wouldn't worry about it too much. It's just sort of an indicator to help you choose the best match. Let's see. Another question here, what does Tracker do? Great question. And you'll notice some of you who I've even spoken to before that I did not talk about the Tracker functionality here. We do support email open tracking. So when you have that feature enabled, which is back up here, you can track email opens. Now, this feature is currently being enhanced There are some issues, limitations in how tracking works, where when we inject the pixel into an email, the user or the recipient has to actually load images for it to tell you that he or she opened the email. So customers do give us feedback that they know someone opened it, but it didn't register. It's likely because they have downloading images turned off. A lot of people do in Outlook. I have it shut off personally. Just a layer of security in case someone stuck a virus in there instead. If someone's clicking around on their phone and hits the email a bunch of times in their inbox, sometimes those numbers can get inflated and tell you someone opened an email 12 times when they really kind of only read it once. But you can turn this feature on. You would just go ahead and click enable, knowing that some of the data may be a little bit different than maybe what you might expect. You can view, I don't think I have any data for this. Let's see. I do not, but this box will pop up and it'll list all of your tracked emails. I just have had the feature off for long enough that I don't have any pre-populated, so I apologize. And when you have it enabled, when you are sending out an email, let's see here. I must have shut the buttons off. You should get an extra button. I just have everything sort of disabled for today's presentation. You should have an extra button here to be able to actually track emails. So we do have email tracking. I will say that it is being enhanced for a future release of our desktop edition. So if that's something that you're sort of keen on, from an account management perspective, I'd probably recommend leaving it off for now unless it's super critical to your business workflow. And then when we have the upcoming releases, when the feature has been a little bit more bolstered, we can certainly talk about turning it on and setting those expectations for you. I'm just going to see here if there are any other questions. In putting this webinar together, it was kind of tricky for me personally, just because I know there are so many little ins and outs and there's so much that our software can do. So I know I sort of popped around a bit and gave a bit of an overview touching on a lot of different areas, but hopefully this was still helpful to everybody. I think it looks like I've gotten to all of the questions. So I'm just going to throw this up here. Before I end today, I do want to remind you we have a variety of online resources that are also available to you. So you can explore the different options, you can explore different editions, and of course you can go through our knowledge base, which has step-by-step articles, quick tips, FAQs, videos. You can also check out our editions page, which I do not have up on the screen, but I can send you if you're interested. That'll give you a comparison of our editions, so you can see the differences between them. If you're looking to purchase, it can help you decide that. If you're a customer, it can help you decide whether it makes sense to move some users around or add an extra option to enhance your CRM adoption. Of course, our support team is available if you run into any technical or configuration issues, and my team is on hand to help consult with you one-on-one and either find the right solution or help you with adoption and rollout. We support a variety of platforms and are available to help you pick the right combination for your company. And if you're like me and you come up with questions after this webinar, you can always feel free to go ahead and email customer success at linkpoint360.com, and I'm happy to help you answer those for you. So I'd like to thank you for joining me today. I hope the session helped demonstrate how LinkPoint Connect can help solve a variety of your email integration challenges while also learning a little bit about the different quirks and bits that LinkPoint Connect offers that maybe you weren't aware of. If you're already a customer, I absolutely look forward to speaking to you or continuing to speak to you about maximizing the value of your subscription. And if you're still exploring your options, I absolutely thank you for considering us, and I look forward to speaking with you in the future. Thanks, everybody.